friends. This is the Womier WK61, and this is my first moddable keyboard. Well, actually, that's not true. That's my first one right there, but that's a whole nother story. Basically, I bought this used to try to mod it. Did not know that the key switches were not hot swappable because the guy didn't know anything about it. Didn't know the model number or anything. I just saw the Acco and Ducky and thought it would be cool to give it a try. I did mod this keyboard. I did the Tempest tape mod to it. I pen lubed the keys. Managed to get some thok out of them. They sound pretty good, but I couldn't get to the stabilizers, so all of my function keys kind of don't sound great. The typing keys, they actually sound really good. To me, anyway. What I did was I went out and bought this keyboard because it's well reviewed. It has a hot swappable PCB so I can change out the switches. It's got all kinds of cool little RGB modes and whatnot that you can change with the function key, and you can just scroll through the modes using the keys. So that's pretty cool. I like the caps it came with. These are pretty cool. But I did get different caps, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But anyway, let's get started modding this thing. So before we get too far, let's try and hear what this sounds like. Now, I am not a touch typist. I am not a great typist. In fact, I'm a very poor typist. I've been typing my whole life, but I never actually learned how to do it correctly. I do have the keyboard memorized, but I never actually learned the proper way to type. So I type a little funny. So, you know, don't hate on me, but let's hear how this thing sounds right now, all stock. So it's not too bad, but it doesn't have the thok. So let's discuss what all we are going to do with this thing. So we are going to be changing out the switches. This has Otemu or Otemu. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I believe it's Otemu actually. So this has linear Otemu red switches, which are fine. They're kind of like Cherry MX reds. Which is what I'm used to. I've been typing on like a Corsair board for the past 5 years with reds in it, so I'm used to that. But I really wanted to try out these silver speed switches. These are the Otemu or Otemu silver speed switches, and these should just drop right into this keyboard. So that is the switches we are going with. I've had them out because I have been lubing them already. I have lubed all these. I have lubed these. I have 2 left, and I'm going to show you the methods I used to lube those. What else are we going to do? I got this little kit, and it came with some O-rings, so we might try hamburger mod. We are definitely going to do the Tempest tape mod. I really like the way that sounds. I also bought some silicone resin, so we are going to fill the back of this keyboard up with resin to get rid of some of the hollowness, maybe add a little bit of thok to it. Lastly, we are going to change out the keycaps, like I said. Though I like these keycaps, I grew up using a very old IBM keyboard that I loved, and I've pretty much had mechanical keyboards my whole life. I've kind of always had one around because the first time I typed on a membrane keyboard, I was like, why does this suck so bad? But the one thing I really loved about that keyboard that you almost never see on new keyboards was the key caps. I got these lava caps, and these are what they call XDA profile. Let me bust this open real quick here. So these are XDA profile keycaps. I would think that they are the least popular keycaps on the planet, and that's fine with me. I don't care if you like them or not. I really like them. I think they're cool. I like that they're kind of rounded and they're sort of flat and they don't have the big scoops in them. This is exactly what I grew up typing on. My family had an IBM mechanical keyboard for over a decade. It was so long that the space bar literally got a hole worn in it from being used. And I just love that thing. So when I saw these caps, I really wanted them. So these are pudding caps, which means they are see-through all the way around, except for on the top. And the lettering is see-through as well. I'm not sure why they call them pudding caps. I would like to think it's because they kind of look like a pudding cup if you flip them upside down, but honestly, I don't know if that's the truth. But these are the caps we're going to use. These are PBT, which means they will not get shiny from repeated use. When you type on like an ABS plastic keyboard, the keys get shiny if your fingers have oil on them, and a lot of your keys will have a shine to them, and a lot of them won't because you don't use certain keys as much. Just looks funny. That doesn't happen with PBT. These are also double shot, which means there's 2 layers to the keycap. So it's a little thicker, a little heavier, should add a little bit of thought theoretically, but mostly it's just they're a nice durable keycap. So this is what we are going to put on the Womier WK61 after we do our other mods to it. And let's get started by pulling off all of these keycaps. If you have never pulled keycaps off, this is how you do it. You get yourself a keycap puller, and you want to go around the keycap and pull just like that. And just kind of work your way down the board. All right, now that we have pulled off the caps, we are going to pull out the switches. This is something that I have never done before. This is going to be the first time I've ever tried it. So wish me luck here, kids. Looks like it's a little harder to get from the front, but that's not too shabby. That wasn't too hard at all. We'll just put these aside. That is done. We have all of our key switches out, and I'm kind of amazed that within a matter of days I already have cat hair on this thing. So what I've decided to do lube wise for the keys is we have 5 keys with stabilizers, and what I'm gonna do is fully lube the switches with keyboard grease, like the way you're supposed to do it, just for those 5 switches. And then the rest of the switches, I'm going to do what is referred to as pen lubing using super lube. This is a dielectric oil, so it is safe to use in electronics. Now, I've already done most of these keys. These all have been super lubed, and these 4 guys back there have all been greased. But I saved one of each to show you the process and my struggles. We're gonna do that next just so I can get it out of the way and I have all of my switches done. Now really, even the long way, the greasing of the switches is not terribly difficult. It's a bit time consuming, but it's not terribly difficult. The problem is this little switch opener does not work very well with these switches. What it is these little guys are supposed to go behind these clips on the side. You just put the key in there and press down in the middle, and it's supposed to open the top. But what it is actually doing is only opening one side. No matter how I try it, it will only open one side. So what I've had to resort to is then taking a razor blade or something really thin and popping up the other side of the switch manually, which is not exactly easy to do. And just like that, I've already pushed the switch back on. So once again, we'll put it on here, press down in the center, and it only opened one side again. There we go. All right, I finally got it. So these are the parts to your mechanical switch. You have your switch cap, you have the switch base, which has the little piece of metal that sends the electrical signal to the motherboard. You have a spring, and you have a little stem. This tool is for grabbing the stem for when you lube it, so you can hold it by the top of the stem. This is some cheap keyboard grease. I'm not far enough along into this hobby to spend money on the real stuff, so I'll take this this here and it'll work just fine for me for now. Every video I watched was like, you do not want to go too crazy with the lube. Just get a little on. You put it on all 4 sides when you're doing a linear switch. And this is a linear switch, so we are going to coat all 4 sides very lightly with this keyboard grease. And you want to do the 2 sides where the stem slides are your biggest priority. Really, all 4 sides should be lubed. That seems a little bit dry to me, so I'm going to grab a little bit more. Not that much more, but a little bit more. I don't even know if you guys can see what I'm doing right now. All right. That is good enough for me. Then you are also going to lube the sides of the base where the stem slides. And then I have seen people do a little around the base. I think that just helps with maybe some of the spring noise. We're going to kind of just dip the end of the spring in here a little bit and then use that lube to kind of spread around on our spring. Now this lube station I have has a nice way to hold these, but I have that thing filled with all the ones I've already lubed. We're going to do this off of that. So we put our little spring back in. Then it's kind of the same deal with the stem. This is what I was talking about. The stem has these 2 little legs here, and those go into the channels on the top and on the bottom of the switch, and that is what guides the stem down. So everything I've seen, you add a little to each side and a little to the faces as well on a linear switch. It is different for other switches. And besides, you shouldn't be listening to anything I tell you because I really don't know what I'm doing yet. I am just following YouTube videos. Okay, so one thing I noticed is there's a little leg on this stem. That little leg goes to the side where the contacts are. So you want to remember that. And then for these, there's a little slot that goes towards the back because this has north-facing LED lights. So you want to get that right. And then just put it back together, snap, and our switch is fully lubed. Nice and quiet. I've already done the other 4, so we're going to put that away. And we're going to put away our grease after we get the excess off our brush so we're not wasting it. I broke out the lube station to show you on this final switch the pen lube method. I think they call it the pen lube method because this little thing of super lube looks kind of like an ink pen. I don't know why. They should just call it the lazy method or something like that. By the way, if you're using super lube, I haven't seen anybody do this in the video, but it says very clearly on it to shake well. So shake this stuff up before you use it. Now, the reason I said lazy method is because with this, you don't take the switch apart at all. I'm taking a toothpick, I'm depressing the stem, I'm adding a drop to each side and like half a drop to the back corners, if you will. And then what I'm gonna do is take a brush and go inside of here and force that super lube down into those channels and do that all the way around the switch. Now I can see why people don't like this method. It obviously saves time, but it's quite messy and it gets mess on the top of your stem. But I tell you what, I actually did this with 3-in-1 oil to that Acco keyboard I have. I can tell you it works. It does in fact work. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it does work. Now, why do I not just go ahead and grease every single switch? Well, because I am not that into this hobby yet. And this is the first time I've ever done it. So I don't want to go crazy, you know? So this method right now in my brain seems just fine to me. And not going nuts and spending 2, maybe way more hours than 2 lubing these things with the grease does not appeal to me. Also, these are kind of cheap switches. This is a cheap keyboard. Maybe down the road, if I really do get into this and I get better at it, then maybe I will spend the time to do that. Right now, I'm not going to do that. So now we are just going to get these out of the way. I did buy 99% isopropyl alcohol, and that is for cleaning the stems off. So our next step is going to be to remove this plate from the board, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to be removed. Do be careful with these screws because you are pulling them out of plastic. These are not in metal inserts. They are screwed straight through into plastic inserts, which is fine, but not the most durable thing on earth. So if you do this, you might want to be careful. And then our plate should pop out. And this is a steel plate, and these are our stabilizers. We are also going to make an attempt at removing these stabilizers from this plate and then probably straightening the plate out a bit because it's a little bit bent. That's nice. And we are going to make an attempt at lubricating these stabilizers. I have heard that these were pre-lubed. If they are, there is very little lube on them. It looks like there's lube on the spacebar. And honestly, when I was playing with this keyboard, I thought maybe the spacebar and this shift key had lube. And it kind of looks like it might, because they were the best sounding of the keys. So we're going to set that plate aside for a moment. And underneath the plate, we have a silicone gasket, which is pretty cool. That is to dampen the sound between the plate and the PCB. Just a nice soft piece of silicone, and I'm going to make note of the way it sits because this is my first time doing this. And then finally we can get our PCB out of here. Is that a little piece of grounding material, or what is that? I think that might be what that is. A little piece of grounding material. And we also have to unplug our USB-C connection. I saw somebody use their switch puller to do this, and I think that that is probably a great idea because I've worked on many computers with those things and they're terrible. Boy, this has flux all over it. We are probably going to want to clean this board off too. You can see flux all around that chip. So they didn't do a good job of cleaning this puppy up. But there is our hot swap PCB. And we're going to set that aside as well for now. Oddly enough, there's a little bit of grubbiness in here. And then we are going to remove our little board. And that is what we are left with. Now what we're going to have to do is devise a way to keep this tilted up while the silicone dries. And we are also going to have to devise a way to seal up this little hole for our USB-C so that doesn't accidentally get filled up with silicone. And I think I have an idea for that. Okay, so what I've done is basically I grabbed some blue tack and I filled up that one hole so it's nice and sealed. Now, if everything goes right, this silicone should peel out of here when we're done and should not permanently stick. If it permanently sticks, this might be a little bit of a pain in my butt, but you know, whatever, no big deal. Also, when you are doing this silicone, you should probably have a way to measure it by weight, which I do not have. What I have is a cup, and I'm going to guesstimate. And we are just going to try to figure this out, kids. I don't know if that's way too much or way too little or what. But now we are basically just going to try to match that amount with our part B. Let's see how close we can get. We got more B to go. And there's probably enough in there for another keyboard or maybe 2 more keyboards even. So not a bad deal. By the way, you guys, all of this stuff, like everything here, was under $100. Literally, the keyboard was 42 bucks. That was the most expensive part. So yeah, maybe just add 100. But yeah, I got these chopsticks here because they are a nice free tool that you can get with some delicious food. So I am going to mix this silicone up. And I'm not gonna make you guys watch me do that because I need to mix this for 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, so I have been stirring these 2 parts of epoxy, or silicone rather. Whenever I think 2-part, I think epoxy. So I've been stirring this silicone for just about 5 minutes. I think we are ready to pour. And what do? We pour. Trying to go a little slowly because I really do not want to get beyond this front line. And I just did. Which, not a big deal because we're going to go a little deeper in the back, so let's just move some of this around. Once again, I've never done anything like this, so this is all uncharted territory for this guy. And I think essentially that is going to do it. So I didn't mix up quite too much. It really wasn't bad. Now I'm going to set this aside so we can work on other things. And this has to cure for 3 to 6 hours. So, okay. I've got some coasters propping this thing up. And now there is nothing left to do with this but to wait for it to dry. So let's work on something else. So I think the next logical step is to clean the back of this PCB because there is some flux all over the back of it. So what I'm going to do is just dump some of this alcohol into a cup, and I have a brand new toothbrush, and I'm just going to wet the bristles. And we're going to go ahead and try to clean this up. Definitely don't want to go crazy when you're doing this. I'm barely touching the toothbrush to this thing. You don't want to accidentally rip one of these SMD components off. Alright, I'm actually going to call that good enough. And actually now we're just going to set that out of the way and let it dry fully. And we will take an attempt at these stabilizers. This is all new territory to me. I don't know quite how this all works. I know that I don't want to break it. And I think I can see how it comes apart. There has got to be a better way to do this. That is the better way. So what I'm doing here, there's a tiny little plastic clip on top of these. You just press it down, and then the stabilizer will pop forward and pop out. I'm trying to keep them all in the same orientation right now, just so I can look at them a little bit more and study them before I go any further, because I've never done this before. Again, I will tell you those were a lot less scary to pull out than I thought they were going to be. This has been a part I've been actually really worried about, was the stabilizers. Again, I wanted to try it on that Acco keyboard I got, but the fact that the Acco keyboard is soldered and not hot swap means that I could not do that. I'll try to slightly bend this plate. This plate is actually really kind of bent. Okay, we got that part down. Now I'm going to stare at these stabilizers for a bit, figure out how to take one of them apart, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, so I've got this figured out. So this is the side of the stabilizer that the wire goes into. The wire goes in like that and then clips into the side. This is the stem of the stabilizer. This goes in and our wire goes into this hole like that. So that stuff faces this way. There is a tiny little foot on the bottom of the stabilizer, and from all I have heard, these should be clipped off. So I'm going to clip these off. You just clip off the little nubbin on the bottom, I believe. I might have to get some close-up glasses and take a better look at that. But yeah, that is how these work. This is the front, that goes to that side, and then that's what you're left with. I am going to figure out how to clip these. I'm going to lube one of these, put it back together, and I will rejoin you after I have done that. There was, in fact, definitely lube on at least this stabilizer. I don't know about any of the other ones yet, but the spacebar stabilizer was lubed, which is why our spacebar sounded all right. Wasn't too bad. Okay, you guys, I got this all figured out, and I have lubed 4 of the 5 stabilizers. I wanted to show you this, though. So on the bottom of these stabilizers, there's this little foot. That's what I was talking about. There's that little bitty hook, and you have to clip off just this part. I mean, you don't have to, but clipping this off makes for a quieter stabilizer. So that has been clipped off. I'm going to show you the process I've been using. I've been doing these basically one side at a time. With the wire up, you turn, you'll hear a little click, and then the wire slides out. Then you have the inside and outside of the stabilizer. You can see they did put like the smallest amount of lube ever on here. A little too small for my liking. So the first thing we're gonna do is clip the little foot off of here. I'm just using nail clippers. I saw somebody do that in a video. It looked like it worked good, and it does. Now that we're done with that, we're going to get some of our keyboard grease, and we are going to go inside of our stabilizer. I understand you can be a little more liberal with the lube here, but you still don't want to go crazy. You want to wipe out like almost all of it. You really just want like a nice thin film on the inside, and if you get too much, just wipe it off your brush and keep going until you just kind of have a thin film all the way around in the stabilizer. Once again, this is not a tutorial. I am learning, and this is what I've heard, what I've seen. After that, we're going to use our little holders and grab our inner stabilizer by the stem. We're going to grab a little more lube, maybe a little tiny bit more than that. And we are going to lube the inner stabilizer up. You want to totally coat this, but again, the coating should be very thin. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it, but on one side of these there are two holes. The two holes go towards the side with the hole on the other part of the stabilizer. I don't even know what it's actually called. And we can set that aside, and then we're going to grab some dielectric grease, and we are going to lube our wire to a much greater extent than the factory did. You don't want to go super crazy, but this wire should be fully coated past the little bend. Some people do like brush this on. I am not brushing it on because in the videos I've seen people brush it on. I've seen people do it just like this, and it doesn't seem to really make that much of a difference. When you put the wire back in, it goes in the second hole, so the topmost hole, which is not exactly the easiest thing on earth to do, but it goes in there. And then you twist and click, and that is done. Now we can move on to the other side, and I'm going to go ahead and do that off screen. Not really sure how well you guys are going to be able to see this, but so this is how it works. The wire goes down. There's two little kind of feet that set on the top edge, and then your stabilizer just snaps back in, and that is it. Our stabilizers are all fully lubed up, ready to go. We've modded them by trimming the little crow foot off to make for a less slammy experience. Okay, this is the Tempest or tape mod. I really didn't show it to you guys because it's not that enthralling. You take blue painter's tape and you coat the back side of your PCB with it. Most people use 3 layers of tape, I find. From just watching videos, it seems like everybody goes up to 3. Some people use electrical tape because they're freaked out. I am not freaked out because this is not that much power going to a keyboard, so I'm not really worried about it. But yeah, that's really it. You basically just cover the back of the PCB with tape. What it does, I don't know. They say it makes it more thucky. In my brain, it adds mass and it adds a little cushioning on the back of the PCB. So I'm okay with that. As long as it does, you know, something. I know that on the Acco keyboard that I modded, it definitely seemed to make a difference. So I decided to do it again. Doctor, the silicone pull was a success. There we go. I cut this chunk out to get our USB board back in there. But otherwise, that was a success. This thing now darn near weighs as much as the whole keyboard used to, and that should most definitely deaden the sound. Should work pretty good. Alright, we've got our USB-C board back in. We've got our taped up PCB ready to go in. And that should just sit down in the chassis just like so. Oh, that's nice. Now we got a little flex too. So nice. Now we get our upper silicone back on. We have silicone above and below now. Our plate with our stabilizers goes back in. I am going to screw this down and I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got all our stabilizer keys back on just so we can test our stabilizers, because it would be a bad idea to fully load the board, put on all of your switches and all of your keycaps, and then learn that the left shift key was sticking because you added too much lube. So this way you can pre-test everything and make sure it's working. So far, so good. These are so quiet and they're all making a nice sound. So I'm ready to pull these off and put in the rest of my switches. I saved the last switch for you guys so you can see how easy this is. This took no time at all. Align your switch with the plate. I've been using my 2 thumbs and you just press down. Done. Now all of our key switches are in. I'm going to throw the keycaps on and we will take a listen to this puppy.